Welcome. Today we're talking with Colin Masson, Global Industry Director of Manufacturing at Microsoft Business Solutions, about the Industrial Internet of Things. GE estimates that the Industrial Internet of Things will become a $200 billion global industry over the next 3 years. Colin, why is IoT the next big thing?
That's a great question, and the estimates vary quite a bit. So I think the last I saw was from McKinsey, and they're talking about by 2025, we're talking about $11 trillion from the Internet of Things as a whole. They break it out slightly differently, but from factories, they're talking about probably 3.7 trillion of that really being around factory scenarios, another trillion from work sites and so on. And if we look at, let's just do the numbers game for a minute, but if you look at today, we're talking about, there's already about, I think last estimates I saw about 9 billion devices out there connected, and in that same 2020 timeframe, 25 timeframe, we're talking about that jumping to somewhere between 25 to 50 billion devices that are connected. So that's why you're seeing everyone talking about the Internet of Things. What's different about the industrial Internet of Things is we're kind of already there. Manufacturing has been investing in smart technologies on the shop floor for quite a while. And GE obviously being one of the leaders in that space. Rockwell Automation would be another, for example, particularly here in the US. So really what I think is changing is the perspective on how do we make use of the fact that we've got all those smart things out there. And if we probably just a slight segue, but if I look at kind of Industry 4.0 and that movement in Germany, a lot of the focus was on cyber physical systems and having those smart systems talking to each other, but it was very much an inside out view of manufacturing. Let me just get smarter and smarter at manufacturing and be able to get very good at manufacturing agility and flexibility from leveraging those technologies. When we talk about the industrial Internet of Things, I think it gives us more of we tend to talk about it more from a outside in perspective. So how can we look at the customer experience with our product and enhancing and improving that? So I would say Industry 4.0 is kind of inside out view of manufacturing, still moves us forward in terms of efficiency, productivity, etc. But I think a lot of the new business models and the transformations that we're seeing people talk about are really because we're taking this outside in view of the Internet of Things and applying it to our industry value chain. So with that context, I think the real potential opportunities within the industrial Internet of Things tend to center around a few key scenarios in manufacturing. One of them is the overall trend towards servitization. So how can I get out of the commodity trap, the race to the bottom on cost by really starting to sell service rather than a product? So traditional examples I think we all know of, but Ecolab would be a great example of, I used to sell cleaning chemicals, now I can sell cleaning services. GE is obviously another one of those classic examples where you move from selling jet engines for aircraft to selling flying hours, right? So really, the way that you can do that and mainstream that so that more manufacturers can do it, and again, you don't have to be the mega manufacturer with lots of budget to go and do this. The difference now is that I can connect those devices using cloud technologies to aggregate that information. I can apply machine learning on top of that to give me the insight. So this is where I can apply the big data on top of that. And I can do that regardless of how big a company I am. I can get started at very low cost. But to do that, of course, you have to have everything from the embedded systems in the devices, which is where you have to look at, can I connect to that wearable, if you're in the wearable business, I've got my band on here, or it's a industrial piece of equipment that may have Rockwell software embedded in it, for example. So I've got to be able to collect that data, but then I need to move it and analyze it. So there's a whole set of services that really you need to come up with that new business model. So turning yourself into a service-oriented business where you're focused on delivering that customer service is dependent on understanding that customer. And that's really where the industrial Internet of Things changes things for manufacturing. They can reimagine their whole business and centering it around the customer and centering it around the delivery of that service because of the much lower entry point now for connecting smart products, analyzing the data from them, and then using those to drive your culture and your enterprise software. But that's where there's another missing piece that I think we are having a lot of conversations with manufacturers around the connection between the Internet of Things and CRM. Because as soon as you want to move into that service business, you want to connect marketing, sales, and of course service in that manufacturing environment. And that's the beauty of the Internet of Things. It gives you almost that common thread so that you can actually get insight into how customers are using your product. You can do the remote monitoring of it. You can automatically generate cases and put those into your CRM system to be proactive on service, for example. But you can also use that same data, apply big data, look for patterns, for example, to determine how should you segment your customer base and perhaps promote different products and upsell, cross-sell into that installed base. You can also use that insight to drive research and development. So now you're not just guessing as to how they use your product, or you're depending on customer surveys that take some time to do. You may still want to do those, but you can now also get real insight from all of those sensors that you've got on your product to see which features do they use, right? How often does it break? How often do they fix it, right? There's a lot of insight that you can get on your product performance and how they are really using your product. They may be using it at 3 times the capacity it was designed for. Well, wouldn't that be nice to feed to your sales department and tell them to get out there and sell them a much more expensive machine and or service, because it's probably breaking down a lot and causing uptime problems for the manufacturer. So they would welcome probably that proactive engagement. So the industrial Internet of Things has to be looked at in the context of new business models, but you can't look at it as one technology. It is really a combination of cloud and I would say big data combined with IoT to give you the insights, and then making it actionable. You really need to build on top of that enterprise software that I would call systems of intelligence, right? That really they are able to take that data, you use machine learning to apply the intelligence on top of that, but then it has to become actionable. It has to go into your ERP system or your CRM system and change the way that you're actually delivering customer experiences.
Thanks for your great insights, Colin.